Today we're going to be talking all about how to screen tenants with Maitri Johnson. So Maitri Johnson leads the tenant and employment background screening vertical at TransUnion as senior vice president. Prior to TransUnion, Maitri spent over 20 years as a multifamily and single-family rental home operator in an executive capacity that included former Riverstone Residential Group and Waypoint Homes. She currently serves as the chair of the screening committee for the National Consumer Reporting Association and member of the Real Estate Technology and Transformation Council's Steering Committee. Did I get that right, Maitri? Welcome on. Well, thank you.
That's a mouthful that I may have to.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Maitri, welcome. We've got a great presentation today. Everybody pop in your questions as they come up. Maitri's going to present for a little bit, and then we're going to do a live Q&A. So please keep your questions going. Let us know where you're tuning in from. What do you do in real estate? And without further ado, I will toss it over to you, Maitri.
Thank you so much, Brady. First of all, let me just do an audio check. Can you hear me okay?
Yep, I hear you. We have a little delay, but I can hear you just fine. Yeah.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much for having me on here today. Welcome, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here with you today. I thought I would start first by giving you a little bit of introduction of myself. I know Brady just did that, but perhaps we'll add a little bit more of an interesting background to who Maitri is and what you should know about me. So first things first, let me get a really important detail out of the way. You may notice that I have a little bit of an accent. So just to get the record straight here, the accent is not from New Jersey, not that I have anything against New Jersey or Australia or any of the other places that people will normally guess. I'm actually from England, which is why you see the British flag here. So that is where you hear a bit of the accent from. However, today I live in the great state of Texas. So I consider my accent to be something I've made up called Tex-ing accent. And within the great state of Texas, I live in Dallas. So that's just a little bit about me. But two other things that I would like to share with you is a good timing right now. You're either a basketball fan or a hockey fan. I happen to be a massive hockey fan supporting the Dallas Stars, and it is the Stanley Cup playoffs. So much of my time is spent watching the playoffs right now. Last but by no means least, and perhaps the most important thing you should know about me is the fact that I do come in my past history. Prior to joining TransUnion in my current capacity, where I've been for 13 years, I was on the property management side in an executive capacity, as you heard Brady say, with some very large property management companies operating across the US. And so I have walked in your shoes and really bring that perspective to the content that I will share with you today. So that's a little bit about me. Before we get into the content here today, I do want to share with you and mention to you that obviously everything I share here is intended to be for informational purposes only. It should not and cannot be construed as legal advice. Obviously, we would like you and prefer you to engage with your own counsel as it relates to any legal advice that you may seek, particularly as we talk about some of the regulatory matters and compliance as a part of this program today. So with that said, there are three major topics that we will cover in today's session. The first topic is going to be how to have a well-executed screening process and what does that look like. Hopefully we'll share with you some tools that you can actually use once you leave this session here today, or at least put you in a position to rethink perhaps how you might be doing some of the things that you're doing as it relates to background screening. The second topic we're going to cover is that this is a very regulated process. Screening is highly regulated by federal agencies, but also by state and local agencies. So we'll talk a little bit about regulatory compliance and why and how that's important. And third and finally, how all of that feeds into how you use the data that comes out of background screening searches. So by the time you leave here today, hopefully you would have learned at least one or two nuggets, but also importantly, have a few tools to take away with you. So let's start with, what does a high performance screening process look like? So why is background screening important? So it's important, it's actually critical for managing a portfolio of rental units, whether it's 1 unit or 1,000 units or 10,000 units. It is truly the gateway to everything that happens at your rental unit. Who you approve to become a renter in your asset makes a difference in how you manage that renter and manage that asset, but also how you manage that asset when that renter moves out. So it is truly the gateway to everything that happens in your rental unit. But it's important, number one, because it's there to protect people and property. These are your other residents and other renters around that particular rental unit, ensuring that everyone goes through the appropriate due diligence and checks and balances, ensure criminal background histories are checked so you don't run into any risk issues. But it also protects the property, right? Managing the property is a costly expense. And so you want to make sure you have renters who are responsible renters, who are going to pay their rent when they're supposed to pay their rent, don't have a criminal history necessarily that's going to endanger others, lowers your eviction risk, but also more recently ensures that you have a renter who actually says who they are. Fraud has reached an epidemic status in the rental housing industry. So this has become a really important part of your due diligence process as landlords and property managers to make your communities safer. And again, also to ensure you know who your renters are that you are approving. Number two, it helps to reduce financial risk and fraud that we just talked about, while improving the quality of the decisions that you're making, but also giving you confidence in the decisions you're making. A very, very, very long time ago, when I first got into this industry, it was a very long time ago, pre the regulatory environment we live in today, pre the tools that we have in place today, where a lot of decisions were sometimes made with a more about how you felt about that renter, not about data. And so today, in the world that we live in and operate in, using data to make these important decisions becomes even more critical. You want to make sure, again, the renters you're approving do not present a financial risk to you, do not present a fraud risk to you. And so the processes you have in place should be designed to help mitigate some of those risks, but also give you confidence in the renters you are approving, and you're doing so in the most compliant manner possible. Which leads me into the third point here, why background screening is important, because it allows you to make fair and consistent, and that's a really important word, consistent, decisions in your approvals of renters. Those decisions need to be data-driven, not based on instinct, not based on how you felt about the person who walked in, not based on the stories they share with you. It has to be based on data that is applied consistently across the board and across all renters who come in and apply for the units on your portfolio. And if you do all of this, you are protecting your brand, particularly when it comes to fraud. There are sophisticated fraud rings who prey on properties and rental units where they've identified a loophole to be able to get approved, and that word of mouth spreads very quickly amongst other fraud rings. So protecting your brand reputation with good due diligence, the appropriate processes in place that are applied consistently helps you minimize risk, minimize potential incidents that happen on the communities, minimizes damage to the units when the renters move out, and also hopefully minimizes potential legal risk that you could take on. So that all collectively protects your brand reputation, which is the other really important reason why background screening is important. Brady, I'm going to pause right there and see if there are any questions that have come up.
Yeah, absolutely. We have a couple questions, and I'll save some for the end when we do Q&A, but a couple relevant ones. So James Mark said, let's see, are you doing a national criminal search? And I think this is in your presentation. So if we're jumping the gun, just let me know.
We do, and yes, it's actually a perfect segue into my next slide. So perhaps I just move to my next slide then.
Let's do it. Yeah.
So historically, there have been three pillars of screening. These are the original core three pillars of screening: credit, criminal, and eviction. There are some times where property managers, landlords have perhaps skipped the eviction part of it. Today, there are regulations that delays when in the screening process you do an eviction search, when in the screening process you do a criminal search. So there are lots of local regulations that manage this process as well. But the original three pillars of screening are these three that you see on my screen. And in each case, you get a report that speaks to the credit health, the criminal background, and the eviction background. On the credit side, you also get a score. And across the board, in some cases, you'll see I've got this asterisk because not everyone, not every background screening provider provides a recommendation. We too provide a recommendation on one portion of our screening business, and we don't in another portion of our screening business. But generally, what you will find is a report consistently across all three pillars. And in the case of credit, you will also get a score. And I'll spend a little bit more time on the score piece of this coming up in the next couple of slides. So that was the original three pillars that, for all intents and purposes, remained unchanged until COVID. When COVID came...
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Maitri. Sorry.
and sorry. Now, one other thing I should mention here before I move to the next slide. All three pillars are underpinned with screening policies. What do I mean by this? Baseline property management here is every landlord property management company develops a set of screening policies. Here are the things that I look for to approve a renter. Here are the things that I could potentially approve a renter with additional deposits, or here are the policies that will force me to deny a renter. All of that is contained within written screening policies. And those screening policies is what drives how you decision in each of these three pillars. Those screening policies are also what allow you to apply consistency across all applicants, which is very important when it comes to compliance with regulations. So those screening policies, again, are the bedrock of everything that happens with your searches, whether it's credit, criminal, or eviction. So now I'm going to fast forward. So I said this was all until COVID hit, right? Post-COVID, we've got two new pillars that have emerged. So today, in today's world, there are 5 pillars for screening. You still have the original 3, but you've also got now today a fraud check and an income verification check. And what the way I've got it laid out here is typically the workflow for the searches. The very first check you would normally do today is a fraud check. You want to make sure that, again, the applicant that you are considering renting to is in fact who they say they are. And I say post COVID, this emerged as a new pillar because in COVID, as we all know, we had to go into a contactless operating model, right? Which meant every single applicant was now online. They were no longer coming into your offices and meeting with you and going and seeing the rental unit and you getting their driver's license and then you showing them the rental unit and they're applying for the rental unit right there. With COVID, everything went online, which means you were no longer seeing the applicant. You were no longer interacting with that applicant. And that gave rise to fraud to its current state of epidemic status. So a fraud check today is very important for you to do the checks and balances as the first step. There are different types of fraud checks. There are fraud checks that look just at documents such as driver's licenses, passports, but that's not enough. Today, fraudsters are very, very sophisticated. So it takes a lot more than just checking driver's licenses and scanning driver's licenses and passports to make sure that they are valid. Today, a lot of people do their business on their cell phone. I know I do, and I'm sure many of you on the call do as well. So device verification is very, very important. What are some of the things to look at? What, for example, TransUnion looks at in this device verification part of our solution. We are looking to see, is this device a newly issued device? Is this a burner device? Is this a device that has been used for a long time? Has it been associated with this name for many years? There are numerous checks and balances that can be done on the device that is being used to apply from to ensure there are no fraudsters. We also will issue one-time passcodes. Many of you have had this experience just with your financial institutions, or let's say you're buying concert tickets and you haven't logged into Ticketmaster for a long time. They will send you a one-time passcode. This has become commonplace. This is another way to have checks and balances in place. And then the fourth one I have here, which is knowledge-based authentication. This quite simply means as part of the fraud check, you are being presented, or the applicant is being presented with questions that they would be the only one who have the answers to. Here's what I mean by that. Sometimes you'll get a question that says, did you ever own a white Lexus GS 350? Or which of these cars have you owned in the last 10 years? Those are the types of questions that are called knowledge-based authentication. Which is another way for us to verify fraudsters. So all of this is to say, it's very important to have a fraud solution in place, but it's also important to have a multi-layered fraud solution, very similar to what I've described here, because that is how you combat sophistication in the fraudster environment, not just checking and looking at documents and thinking your trained eye can pick up on fraudulent documents. Today, documents can be emulated very, very easily and very, very well through all the technology that is available. So you really need a smart technology to be able to do this. That's step number one. Step number two, you move into the credit piece, which is one of the original core three. And more recently, income verification is another pillar that's been added to the screening process. This is where you may be getting paychecks to validate income. You may be getting offer letters. Again, paychecks and offer letters, if you're not using a technology for this and you're only accepting hard copies can be fraudulent documents and can be made to look real very, very easily and very, very well. So again, it's very important to use a technology to be able to identify um, solid paychecks, solid offer letters. And then there's additional technology today that will quite simply look at bank accounts. Are they getting a deposit into their bank accounts every other week? That's their paycheck. That is really the easiest way. And there's technology today. We offer this as well at TransUnion, that will allow you to be able to have that view. And then the other two are part of the original three. So today, in today's rental housing world, screening looks like this. So you can see the evolution, you can see the representation of what's happened in our industry, particularly post-COVID.
This is great, Maitri. Thank you. I've seen a few questions on how is it done? How can you actually do this screening? After the presentation, before we get into Q&A, I'll share my screen and show you guys how easy this is to do in RentRedi. It's literally just a few clicks to have your tenant go through the screening process. They go through it on their end and you get the report back. So yeah, I'll share that in just a little bit, but yeah, keep cruising along, Maitri.
Great, thank you so much. And can you do a time check for me real quick, please, Brady?
Yeah, we're at 12:35.
Okay, great, thank you. Okay, so here we have, this is a tangible tool for you to be able to use if you are interested. It's an example of a screening workflow that includes all 5 of those pillars that I just described. So it starts with the applicant submitting their rental application, let's say through RentRedi or any other platform you're using. Then the very first check that can happen is the identity verification, confirming that the applicant is who they say they are before you actually take them into the credit, criminal, and eviction checks, which is the third step in the process. And then the new income verification that I just referred to, which is a new sub-process of this. And then from there, once all of those checks have been done, the landlord receives all of the reports and the recommendations, if applicable, based on the screening provider. And then the landlord reviews the reports using those screening policies as your baseline to complete your decision. Again, I cannot stress the importance of having documented, written screening policies, because if anyone ever comes knocking on your door wanting to know how did you make the decision to rent to this person and not that person, you can point to your screening policies as your North Star on how you make your decisions on applicants. And then finally, the final step, now I've obviously simplified this here, but the final step here is the landlord informing the applicant on the decision based on the results of all the checks that you did, based on what's in your screening policies. And if there's an adverse action that comes out of your checks and balances on that applicant, you are required by law to send an adverse action notice to that applicant. And that is part of the FCRA regulation. So really important, if an applicant is anything but an accept, where you are placing additional burden of proof, i.e. bring in more documents, i.e. increase your security deposit, anything like that is considered an adverse action, in which case you as the landlord need to send out an adverse action notice to the applicant. So, core components of the background screening process. So on that point of the adverse action being governed by FCRA, that takes me directly into regulatory compliance. And there's a lot going on with regulatory compliance. And so what I've highlighted here are what we all consider the bedrock of the screening process, which are 2 federal regulations and 2 federal acts that govern screening processes. And please, I do not want you to take away the fact that these are the only 2. There is a long list behind this, but this is really what everything gets grounded in. So the fact that regulates collection, accuracy, privacy, and fairness of personal information in consumer reports. Consumer reports are considered to be the credit reports, criminal reports, and eviction reports are all viewed as consumer reports and hence governed by this act. The federal agencies that oversee the or have the authority over enforcing the rules of this act are the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, CFPB, and the Federal Trade Commission, the FTC. The second act that is also the bedrock of screening policy, perhaps one that you are more familiar with, which is the Fair Housing Act. It is also a federal act that was enacted back in 1968, subsequently revised in 1988, I believe. And this act prohibits the discrimination in housing. This is as applicable in rental housing as it is in home ownership. Anything to do with housing, the Federal Fair Housing Act has authority over. There are 7 protected classes under the Federal Act. And those acts are those classes are race, color, national origin, religion, sex, familial status, and disability. Now, these are the 7 federal protected classes. Again, it is really important to know what's applicable in the jurisdictions that you are operating in. A lot of states and local jurisdictions have additional protected classes that they have added to this list. HUD is the federal governing agency of this particular act. So regulatory compliance is really important. Just know coming out of this is why screening policy is written. Screening policy, knowing what you're supposed to do versus what you should not be doing is part of the education. If you have local apartment associations, local resources you can lean into to get educated on what's happening from a regulatory environment space with housing, that's a really good thing because regulatory compliance is not an option, everyone. It is required. And we certainly don't want anyone to get caught with something that you did not know about. So, okay, so this is again my disclaimer here. We've highlighted 2 of the federal regulations under the FCRA and Fair Housing Act, but there are a long list of state and local acts that you should be familiar with based on where you are operating. So again, I encourage you to look at your local apartment associations as a great resource, your own companies as a great resource, and your own legal counsel as a great resource to make sure your screening practices are fully compliant.
Maitri,
and last but by no
two
means least is the third portion of our agenda.
Yeah, 2 quick questions. So one of these, Andre is asking, does the adverse action have to be sent directly to the applicant or can it be sent to their agent representative?
It has to be sent directly to the applicant, generally. However, if the applicant came via an agent or a realtor, I would suggest you ask legal counsel on whether or not they too should be receiving a copy of the notice.
Okay. And then another one was from
But
Sally.
the consumer is generally...
Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Oh, Sally says, how do you screen for businesses? Can you screen by business EIN or the owner's social security?
So at TransUnion, we actually have a corporate verification process that we partner with Dun & Bradstreet, which is renowned for business applications and business credit reports. So yes, we can use TIN numbers, tax identification numbers, to be able to process business credit reports for corporate applications.
Okay, that's great.
Okay, so now let's talk a little bit about how to use the data that comes in through the credit reports, criminal reports, and eviction reports. reports. Okay. My quick headline here is data is important. Data is vital. Again, I go back to the scenario I painted in the very early days of my career in this industry, which is now 30 plus years off the table. Today, that is not an option. So it is critically important that data in the consumer reports is used judiciously and aligned with your policies. So it's not an option. You cannot rely on gut instinct, because if you do that, you are not applying policies consistently across the board. And that's the major risk you will run into. So data is important, because from creditworthiness to how they're going to perform once they become a renter, data helps guide you through that and gives you confidence in the decision you're making in approving that renter. And most importantly, it's also protecting your P&L, your NOI, but also, even more importantly, complying with regulatory environments. Now, I'm going to go through each bullet here, but I'm going to go through it relatively quickly. So first bullet here, not all scores are equal when using standard credit scores. So let me just unpack that a little bit. A lot of times we refer, or we think about Vantage score, we think about FICO score, and a lot of times these scores were built for a universal purpose. And that universal purpose is Maitri Johnson a good borrower who is going to pay her debts on time the way I need her to? Okay. However, the score today has evolved. It's become smarter. And today, for example, when you go out and you buy a car, there is a Vantage score auto loan specific score. There is, when you're going out and getting a mortgage, there's a FICO specifically designed for mortgage. So today, while we sort of bucket everything into Vantage and FICO, etc., there are versions of those scores that are very specific for the type of loan that you get. In the same way, part of the benefit of partnering with RentReady, who partners with TransUnion, we have the ability to build our own scores. And so back in 2013, we built our own score that was specific for the rental housing industry, called the residence score. And that residence score was designed to predict the specific outcomes in rental housing, evictions and skips. So today, in the rental housing industry that we serve with our customers, we provide our customers with our TransUnion residence score. And you will see here, because it is specific to the rental housing industry, it's 7% more predictive than the Vantage score on evictions and skips. That's the 3.0 version, and 4.6% more predictive on the more current Vantage score 4.0. All of this is to say, residence score performs better than the universal Vantage score because it was designed specifically to predict evictions and skips for the rental housing industry with rental housing data. And as TransUnion, with our access to the data that we have, we're able to do this. We actually update our score, refresh our score every 3 years, because things change economically, technologically. And so by refreshing our model every 3 years, we're able to give our customers the most current economic view within the model and technology view within the model. That leads me into the next bullet point of helping predict eviction risk, because that's what you care about, right? You care about the eviction risk. You care about the fact that you want a renter in your rental unit who's going to take care of their unit while they're living there, so that when you go in, when they move out, it's not a massive renovation you have to do. It's more of a touch up that you need to do to get ready for your next renter. It also supports, scores support fair and consistent decisioning. This goes back to the screening policies. In your screening policies, you can have from this score to this score. It's an accept. From this score to this score, I can accept it, but I want a higher deposit. From this score to this score, it's a decline. But you're using that same methodology across all your applicants to support fair and consistent decisioning, going back to the FCRA, going back to the Fair Housing Act. By doing so, you're also getting the most qualified renters without increasing your risk. That's also very important, which ties back to NOI and the fact that our screening workflow can integrate seamlessly into the Rent Ready workflow, for example, and other workflows. And we're also getting ready to bring into market our integrated income verification and a host of other things as well. So data is not only good, it's critical to help set you up for success and compliance. So all of this is to say, when you see this picture, you see a beautiful castle. I go back to my British roots that I started with at the top of this call. This is a castle in Leeds, England, surrounded by a body of water, which is referred to as a moat, and I am sure all of you know that. So moats were designed to protect these castles and keep the enemies out, right? Screening is designed to protect your castle, your rental unit. And so please make sure you keep that in mind. It's not just a checkbox as part of operating a rental unit. It is critical to protecting your asset. And with that said, I have my contact information here. If anyone needs to ask any questions, you can do so here, but you've also got my contact information to reach out to me.
This is great.
Brady,
Thank you,
back to
Maitri.
you.
Yeah, thank you. What I'll do is I'll show people kind of how you do a screening in Rent Ready real quick. And then Maitri, if it's okay with you, do you mind going a few minutes past the hour to answer some questions since we got a little late start?
No problem.
Okay, great. Let me share my screen here. And if you want to end your screen share, Maitri, if you want to pull that off, I'm going to put mine up real quick here. Okay, beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Okay. Okay, so I know a few of you are asking how to do a screening. Like, what is the actual technology? Let me show you real quick. If I can get my ducks in a row. Sorry, everyone. The platform we're using, we do this every couple of weeks, and they've been really smooth so far. But we've just had a few issues today. Okay, here we go. All right, presentation. Bear with me here. Come on. Okay, here we go. Here we go. Okay, so if you are on Rent Ready on your dashboard, it probably looks like this. All you have to do is come over here into leasing on the left-hand side, and then you come over here to applications. You'll see all the applications. You click on one of the applicants.
Brady, I'm not seeing your screen.
Oh, it should be live. It might just be on your end. I think sometimes the guests can't see the screen, but let me know, everyone, if you can see the screen. So you come over here into applications. Okay, great. You can see. And then you just click on screening right here, and then just request a screening. And so you'll see the applicant name, their email, and then just like Maitri was talking about, credit, criminal, eviction reports. And then you can have the option to include the income and asset reports like Maitri was talking about. And then request the background check. And that's all it is. And you can even, let's say if you wanted to turn on auto screening, so you don't have to manually do this for each tenant, you can just come into your screening rules and click on add rule. And you can apply it to either all properties or just specific properties and specific units. So it sends out that screening request to a tenant automatically. So that's it. Super easy. Let us know if you have any questions on that. But otherwise, let me get into the questions here because you guys have some great ones. Let's see. James said that doesn't answer the question. Let me know. Let me know specifically. Let's see. Pass that cost. Does rent ready allow you to pass that cost down to the applicant? That I'm actually. Oh yes, it is passed on to the applicant. So the applicant pays that fee. I don't know if there's a setting to have you pay it. I'd have to follow up on that. James, let me know what your question is specifically. Hopefully I can answer it for you, but let me go back to some of the questions you guys submitted in advance here. Okay, so here's a good one from AJ Maitri. How do you communicate with a potential tenant that they are not a match due to poor credit history without any issues? Like, do you have any recommended phrasing for this?
So I hate to defer to legal counsel here, but obviously that's what I'm going to do. However, this is where the adverse action notice becomes really an important vehicle and tool to use. The adverse action, you don't want to hide behind an adverse action notice either. Obviously, you would communicate with the applicant that unfortunately, due to information that surfaced in the consumer reports and the checks that we did, we are unable to move forward with your application. They are more than welcome to get a free copy of their credit report by going to, freecreditreport.com or to any of the bureaus to get a copy of their credit report. But it's also important in that instance to ensure that you're following the FCRA regulation and giving them an adverse action notice.
Okay. Yeah, that's great. That's helpful. Let's see. Jack Ryan is asking if we turned out an applicant, what documents have to be filed. We answered that part, but they're also asking, how long do you have to keep those? Like, does the landlord have to maintain those for a certain amount of time? And what's the best way to keep those screening records?
Yeah, so when you think about fair housing, right, I think it's 7 years for someone to file a complaint. So you want to keep them for 7 years. But again, these are all policies that should be defined by you and have them as written policies. So you always have that to lean on should there ever be an issue that arises.
Okay. Yeah, that's great. And I see a couple questions on like, how's it work? Who are we using? So Rent Ready partners with TransUnion to perform these checks. So when you go in and request the screening, TransUnion is handling that part of it. So the applicant, or excuse me, your applicant will go through the TransUnion process essentially inside Rent Ready. Let's see. We've had a couple, I don't know if you could speak to this, Maitri, but we've had a few on animals. So how do you deal with tenants claiming to have emotional support animals when the property has no dog policy? And somebody else had just asked in the live chat, any plans to include ESA animal checks?
So service animals are protected under the disability protected class of the Federal Fair Housing Act. So you can't deny them even though you have a no pet policy property. But what you can do, and you're well within your right to do, is ask for documentation that validates that this is in fact a service animal as defined by the medical field and under the law.
Okay. Yeah, that's great. Okay, we've got some other questions. Let's see here.
I do want to, if you don't mind, there are a couple of questions here that I see that I would love to answer because I'm just looking at them right here.
Yeah, absolutely. Go for it.
From Ilmeda, I hope I pronounced your name correctly. The question is, what is your policy for checking local court records alongside screening reports? How do you document and justify a denial when the third party report is clean, but your independent research shows otherwise? So this is something, and I'm glad you raised this question. This is a really important question. So a lot of times, there may be people who go out and do your own research online because these are public records, right? So, and you may find something in that public record environment through your own research that doesn't come up in the reports. I would caution you, there's a reason why it didn't come up in the reports. It may not come up in the reports because there are absolutely compliance filters set by that jurisdiction in how long you can show those records for, how long should those records appear on the reports. So if let's say a jurisdiction has a five-year timeline for a record to show, and it's been 6 years, so that record doesn't show anymore on the report, but what it does do is it comes up in your research. You use your independent research at your own risk.
Okay, that's good. That's good.
Okay.
Let's
One
see.
more question
Yeah.
is there a service for for service animals, for service animal documents? I can't tell you, I have TransUnion has no partnership relationship with this company, but I do know that there is a company called Pet Screening, where you can actually take a pet through pet screening. So I think this is designed for this type of a scenario. So the person who asked that question, Jacqueline Pinnell, you might want to research petscreening.com and see if that is a viable option for you.
Okay, that's great. Kim's got a question here. Since rent already gives a resident score instead of a credit score, how do we let the tenant know on the adverse action?
The score doesn't bear on the adverse action. And what I mean by that is if the score is coming back where you have a policy that you're not going to accept a score below a certain threshold, that's a denial. That means you're taking an adverse action, which means you have to deliver an adverse action notice to the tenant, to the applicant. If you all need copies of a template for an adverse action notice, you can actually go to I don't know if RentReady has a template for it, but there is a template available on the cfpb.gov website. There's also a template available on one of our platforms called mysmartmove.com. There's some templates for the adverse action notice out there as well. So if you don't have one, you can certainly get access to one through those resources.
Okay, that's great. Rashid, I see a couple of you have remedy specific questions. I will do my best. I don't have answers to them right now. I will do my best to follow up in an email with you though. Great questions. Let's see, what else do we have?
May I answer one more question? I had seen this
Yes,
earlier.
please.
I'll make sure. Karen Fry, we have an agreement with the U.S. Air Force Base where individuals have gone through extensive background checks to obtain access to the base. Therefore, we do not usually require them to do the background check. Makes complete sense to me. If this is in our screening policies, is that sufficient? I would think so.
Okay, that's good. That's good. That was the one I was going to pull up, so that's great.
Please make sure you are validating all of this with the counsel you work with.
Yeah. James asked, does a national criminal search cover all courts?
The national search covers almost all of it. You get about 94% coverage through, it's called extended search. I don't know which package RentReady uses.
Okay, that's good. Let's see. And then we'll take just a couple more because I know we're about at time. Let's see. Richard is asking, is it legal to increase the deposit on a tenant if you expect a tenant that has a score that is lower than you normally accept?
If you have it documented as a standard, consistent policy, where it says you will accept from 550 to 650, you will accept them, but you will do so with 1.5 times the standard deposit. And if anyone's over a 650, they're just a straight up accept, and it's just the standard deposit. This is why those screening policies are your North Star, as long as you have it documented.
Okay, that's great. That's good advice. Let's see. Andre we'll take two more. Andre was wondering if you could speak a little bit more about the Vantage score.
Vantage is quite simply a credit score that was developed by the three bureaus, TransUnion, Experian, and Equifax. And it operates just like any other score. I mean, it's just really Vantage and FICO, but there are different versions of it depending on which industry is using that score. So again, in the example that I gave earlier, if you are you're going to get an auto, buying a new car, and you're getting a loan on that new car, that dealer is going to be using a Vantage score that was specifically designed for the auto loan industry, not for the mortgage industry.
Okay, that's great. Let's see. When you say document, Richard's asking, when you say document, you mean on the application they fill out, correct? I think he's asking, documenting the reason for the adverse action.
Well, the document meaning the screening policies define how you make your decision. And if they are anything but a regular accept that requires an adverse action notice, you have it in that screening policy document.
Okay, gotcha. That makes sense. Your own internal documents. Okay, cool. And then Candy had asked, is there a fee for the screening? Yes. And then Renee had asked, can you please go over one more time how to do the background check? Yeah, I'll share it one more time if that's real quick, and then we will wrap it up since we're about at time. Does that sound good to you, Maitri?
Sure.
Okay. Let's see. Give me 1 second. Let's see if I get my screen. I don't know. You guys are asking for a lot, trying to get my screen to share twice with the issues we had today. Okay, let's see here. No, it's totally fine. Okay, so if you're on your Rent Ready dashboard on your desktop, it'll look like this. You're going to come over here to leasing on the left-hand side. Click that, and then go into applications. From there, you click on the application. So I'm just going to click this one. This is just fake data. This is a demo account, so don't worry. We're going to click on screening right here, and then request screening right here. And then that's how you do it. $39.99 that the applicant pays for the credit, criminal, and eviction reports. And then you can request that they do the income and asset reports as well for $10. So it's a total of $50 paid by the applicant. That's the entire fee for the whole screening. $50 or $49.99. Awesome. All right. Well, we're about out of time. Thank you. You guys had some great questions. I'm so sorry we can't get to them all. You had some really good ones, though. We will send out a recording of the webinar either later today or more likely tomorrow. But just a couple quick housekeeping items before we go. Our next webinar is going to be May 7th. With Smart Real Estate Coach, we're going to be talking about how to generate 3 different income streams when you buy your next rental, and how to do it without cash, without credit, and without banks. And then lastly, if you are not a Rent Ready customer right now, we would love to help you out, help you buy your time back, grow your portfolio. If you're not familiar with us, let me share this real quick here. If you're not familiar with us, we're an all-in-one app that lets anyone self-manage rentals. I truly believe it's simpler and more affordable than any other options out there, like you've seen in the demo today. You can collect rent, screen, list units, handle maintenance, handle your accounting, all within the app. Whether you have 1 unit or 150 units, you can do it all for about $12 a month. And another really cool thing that we just released recently is now you can see your portfolio at a glance. So in the accounting section of the Rent Ready app, you can see your NOI, your cash flow, cash on cash return, all those things, so you know where to double down in your portfolio so you can make better decisions. Whether you're a customer or not, we would love to chat with you. We would love to help you out. You can book a call at rentready.com/call us and talk with anyone on our team. And that's about it. I know a couple of you asked a couple of specific Rent Ready questions I didn't have an answer for, but I will do my best to go through the chat and then follow up with you via email. So thank you.